Canadian police have warned an exiled Saudi dissident that his life may be in danger. The Guardian newspaper reports that Omar Abdulaziz was told he's a potential target of the Saudi government. He was warned to take precautions. Abdulaziz was a close associate of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was killed by Saudi operatives in Turkey in 2018. Let's bring in Nader Hashemi. He's the Director of Middle East Studies at the University of Denver. That is where he's joining us from. Thanks for your time with us on the Al Jazeera News Hour. How concerning is this?
Well, it's very concerning because it's clear that the Saudi Crown Prince has learned nothing from the murder and assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, and he's once again on the prowl. And this, I think, unless he's stopped, it sends a message to all authoritarian regimes around the world that they can also imprison, they can also intimidate and go after dissidents wherever they may be living.
Right, and he's among several activists, Omar Abdulaziz, that is. He's among several activists, including one who had been given a similar warnings by the Norwegian police. That was in 2019. What is it about Abdulaziz and Iyad al-Baghdadi, who was warned by Norway, that worries Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, both of the men that you mentioned are very active on social media. They have a huge amount of followers. They're very influential. And many Saudis use Twitter in particular as a form of communication. So I think that's fundamentally the concern that the Saudi Crown Prince has. He wants to intimidate political dissidents, silence them by threatening their life.
UN Special Rapporteur Agnes Kalamar, the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, has tweeted that this is not surprising. And she says that as long as there's no cost associated with this behavior, then Saudi Arabia will continue to threaten and silence dissidents. I mean, is that it? Is the silence of the international community partly to blame here?
Well, I think that's exactly the problem. I think the Saudi Crown Prince is acting like a schoolyard bully who will continue to act aggressively until there are consequences to his behavior. And if you look back over the last roughly 2 years since the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, there have been really no serious consequences for the Saudi Crown Prince. He continues to intimidate dissidents. He continues to have very close relations, not just with the Trump administration, but with many other Western liberal democracies that claim to uphold human rights. None of them have taken a serious position. They continue to sell arms to Saudi Arabia. They continue to have very warm relations. And this November, most of those leaders of Western liberal democracies that claim to uphold international law and human rights will be traveling to Riyadh for the G20 summit. So I think this is part of the problem.
Yeah, so what does Canada in particular do next? Because obviously Omar Abdulaziz is living right now in Canada. Canada does continue to speak out on human rights, yet at the same time, it did sell a record amount of arms in 2019 to Saudi Arabia.
Well, this is precisely the problem. It's the double standard and the hypocrisy that we see from countries like Canada. I think what needs to happen is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau needs to pick up the telephone, needs to call the Saudi Crown Prince and tell him to cut it out, to back off. Unless Saudi Arabia backs off from intimidating and threatening dissidents living on Canadian soil, then the government of Canada, has to warn the Saudi government that they're going to raise this issue in every international fora possible. Perhaps that might send a message to the Saudi Crown Prince.
I mean, I got to ask you, though, how likely is that scenario?
Well, it's not likely because when it comes right down to it, the reason why many of these Western liberal democracies have close relations, economic, political, and military relations with Saudi Arabia is because they want to make money off of Saudi Arabia. That's the fundamental, I think, problem here, that there are powerful business interests in all of these Western capitals that are pressing elected governments to maintain close relations with Saudi Arabia, regardless of the human rights record that the Saudi Crown Prince has. So I think that's the fundamental problem. So if citizens in Western liberal democracies are upset over the behavior of the Saudi Crown Prince, they fundamentally have to blame their own elected governments.
All right, Nader Hashemi, we thank you very much for speaking to us on Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Thanks.